when doors open was like in person, we'd always have our shop open and we'd have people come through, and every single day they were like, I've always wanted to try one of these, but I don't want to look stupid doing it. So like a lot of our marketing is trying to get, like, we'll put on classes and things like that of like an opportunity for you, like when you're trying to figure out a new thing, I don't think anyone looks stupid. Like, you know, it's a new thing, you're trying to figure it out. Like, let's be a little bit kinder with ourselves and each other than that. But to give people a safe space that they can try it out, have someone show them how it works. So we try to do little classes to just sort of walk people through that. We'll make short video content that will show people checking out the bike and doing stuff like that. So that's really, like, most people know what Bublr is, that sort of how it works, but sort of trying to get that of like here, lowering that like intellectual barrier of like, this is some new thing.
Well, welcome to another edition of Over a Pint Marketing. This podcast focuses on the fast-paced and ever-changing world of marketing communications, and it's told through the eyes of three industry veterans with over 75 years of experience in the trenches. There's no theory here, gentlemen. Theory is for wimps. This is real-world, practical experience told to you by those that have been there, and that includes today's guests. So grab a pint of your favorite beverage and join us for another edition of Over a Pint Marketing. Gentlemen, welcome. My name is BrianM. I am today's host of our adventure. I'm joined today by my business partner at Celtic, Kurt Lingle. I'm also joined by my other cohort, Pat McGovern from Acedia, a digital marketing firm here in Milwaukee. And we are very, very excited to have our special guest today, James Davies, who is the executive director of Bublr Bikes. Gentlemen, cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Welcome, James.
James, welcome to the pod.
I am excited to be here.
Awesome.
That's great. Before we dive in, we do have our traditions and we can't break for those, but we just go around the horn and we talk about what we're drinking. Today, I'll start off. I'm drinking a Guinness and one of our nice Celtic pint glasses. Kurt, what are you drinking?
I am drinking a coffee stout. It's called Murdered by Crows by Gavin Place Brewing Company in River West.
That's
good
different
stuff.
Mr. McGovern?
I'm going with my standby, my Cream City Bricks, cream ale, delicious on a beautiful summer day.
Nice. And James, I think, is maybe coffee, tea, or water.
Yeah, I've got tea here. Sorry, I'm in the office, so.
Totally get it. This guy's a pro. There's no time for beer, especially at 3:15 on a Wednesday, right? Well, let's get into it. I've actually been looking forward to this one for a long time because we're very familiar with Bublr Bikes. And in the past, I've been an annual subscriber. I think it's just a great addition to Milwaukee having a bike sharing program. But before we get into Bublr, James, I'd like to just ask you to just give us a top line on you, a little bit of an overview on who you are and your experience.
I guess my experience that's relevant here is that I really like bicycles. My formal education has absolutely nothing with what I am doing today. I am an attorney, and my undergrad is in genetics, so absolutely unrelated to what I do today. But yeah, that's my all of my school. But I do think that all my schooling experience is I both, when I was in undergrad and law school, I did use a bike as my primary form of transportation. So I think that might have had something to do with
it. You got the bike bug, right?
Yeah.
So you are now the executive director of Bublr. This is fairly recent, within the past year or so, correct?
I think I made a year September. I don't know. Time went seemed to pass strange last year, but yeah, I think we're just over a year. Okay. And within that year, I'm assuming you've been jumped into a lot of roles of fund development and operations and marketing and just about everything else in between. Yes. Yeah. No, that's before I did work at Bublr before that, but I was really more in the operations side of things.
Okay.
And so jumping more into that fund development, marketing side of things has has definitely been exciting.
That's great. Sounds like a great opportunity to touch a lot of areas. Now, we're all familiar with Bublr. We've got stations all over Milwaukee and out into the suburbs, and we've ridden them and we're aware of it. But maybe for those that don't know Bublr, if you could just give a really high overview of what is Bublr and what is just bike sharing in general and how that works.
Absolutely. So Bublr is a local nonprofit based in Milwaukee. We've only got equipment in Milwaukee, West Allis, and Wauwatosa. We're a nonprofit. A lot of people, maybe even if they thought they knew that, with all the new micromobility is like the hot thing right now, you know. So, but yeah, we're a nonprofit. Bike share. We're a DAC bike share system. So bike share is you've got these bikes available for short, sort of point-to-point trips. Bikes come out of a station, go into another station, but you can take them to any station. Any station, any DAC. Sometimes we'll get, that's a fun customer service call because it's so easy. I returned my bike to a different DAC than I checked it out from. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes, that is okay.
It's the whole point, right?
Yep. You can go all over the place. So yeah, that's, we've got 86 stations in Milwaukee, West Allis, and Wauwatosa, and just about 600 bikes. And we're going to be adding 26 more stations. And we're going to bring in e-bikes into the fleet.
Wow. Yeah, I heard about that. You know, if we can just talk a little bit about bike sharing. When I first got downtown and saw the stations, it was new to me. I hadn't really known much about it, but I always felt it would be something for more dense, very large cities. Like, you know, you think of like a New York or a Boston or Chicago where people are commuting. They're not in their cars as much. They're probably a lot more willing to hop on a bike to get to a meeting quickly here or there. But really now these are sprouting up into mid-sized cities like Milwaukee and even smaller cities. I mean, how has this bike share program worked here, in your opinion, over the past, has it been 5 years or so? I'm thinking maybe a little bit more, 6 years.
This year's our 7th birthday.
Great.
It's
awesome.
In August, yeah.
So how has this model worked in Milwaukee?
So I think it is, like, I do think it's used here a little bit differently than maybe in some of those more heavy, non-car commuting cities like Philadelphia or Boston, or what have you. So only about 30% of our trips are going to work or school, whereas like a system in Philadelphia could be maybe like 70% or something. I don't know their numbers off the top of my head. I'm just making things up. But I know our numbers off the top of my head, but I don't know. But so about a third of our trips are really those commuting trips, and so I think we're a lot heavier in sort of that like recreation, or like I'm going out. I'm just gonna go grab a coffee or go grab some food from a restaurant or go someplace for lunch. Like I drove into the office, but it'll take me my entire lunch break to wind my way out of that parking structure at 2 miles per hour, and then, or I could just hop on the Bublr bike that's outside my office and go 2 blocks, and I'm at the public market, and I'm back, and I had a great lunch, and I wasn't like trying to refight for a parking spot, and I wasn't winding. I don't drive a lot, obviously, but there's nothing I hate more than that, like winding out of a parking structure at 1 mile per hour. And you're like, wait.
Yeah,
so
go ahead,
we got a lot more users like that, like park once type of use. Yeah.
You know, but that's kind of the beauty of it from what I see it is, I guess you'd love to have it be a commuter type of thing where people are leaving their cars at home. But if you can take that first step of saying, listen, if you want to go up to Starbucks that's 2 blocks away, hop on a bike. You know, if you want to grab lunch or go down to the lakefront, hop on a bike. And I know over the years it's become more ingrained in my habit. I'm a commuter from Wauwatosa in a car, but once I get down here, I try to leave the car and use it for more of those trips. So I think that's success in a market like Milwaukee.
Well, and I do really think like that's even the whole bike. I think it's something like 48% of the trips in Milwaukee are like less than 4 miles. So like, we're not talking about like the person who's commuting in from Waukesha, like switching to a bike or whatever. Like we're talking about these short trips. Like you just popped over to the CVS for whatever, you know what I mean? Like if we could even get a tiny percentage of those, it's like that's a huge impact both on like people getting a little bit more exercise. That's one less car. Like if you are that person that's driving 9 miles and you're 10 miles or 14 miles, if you took all those cars off the road they're literally hopping in the car to go a mile, and like think of the parking spaces that are freed up for those people that did need to drive. So I do think that's pretty awesome.
Question I have for you, James, and You're right. Different cities are modeled different ways. Where if you look at a Boston, a Philly, Chicago, absolutely less dependent on driving, much more dependent on public transportation and other ways of getting around. Milwaukee is a little bit different within that structure. But when I was on your website, and you're right, Brian, we're familiar now that we're down here in the third ward. We've got a station right by our office. But I was on your website, and obviously it's probably about much more than just the getting around. I was noticing, like who wins. You got local business, you got obviously the individual that's using it, and then there's the community. I mean, it also probably, as you're saying, I get to go to the CVS, or I get to go to explore maybe another neighborhood. Maybe I'm pedaling to a Bayview or wherever it might be, and I get to go into the bookstore or the coffee shop or grab a beer or something. I mean, there's other benefits to this, probably to a bigger picture than just like transportation. I mean, maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Well, it's something that a lot of businesses look for when they're relocating. They definitely look at, like, does this city have multimodal options? Because when you're talking about trying to attract talent and stuff like that, that's definitely something that they look for. But I also, just one second. Sorry.
Hey, no problem. This isn't live. This isn't CBS Evening News live.
Hey,
it's taped.
Who was that masked man behind you?
Yeah.
Who was that?
Yeah. But there he is. There he is
again.
Yeah. That's Andrew answering our customer service questions on live podcast, or not live podcast. But so I think definitely it also, because you return it to a station, I think that there's benefits there in terms of like, hey, like, go explore, like, okay, I had to return it a block from maybe where I wanted to, but like, what's this cool coffee shop, or what's this bar or whatever. But also I think like there's people that make like little games out of it. In the extreme example, we had a super fan last summer, or 2 summers ago, who biked to every single station in a row consecutively. That's
pretty cool.
And very super cool. But like there's other little things like that. Like we do little contests sometimes of just like check out new different stations. But I do think it's sort of like a little incentive to explore and see some more things around the city that you might not have seen. And I do also think just generally biking, whether it's bike share or not, like if you just drive through a place to go somewhere, a lot of times you're not really seeing it. You're not really being there. But if you take the little 2-mile bike ride, you go through a neighborhood that maybe you've driven through there 100 times, but you never noticed that, like, oh, like there's some cool stuff. Like next weekend I should come here. Like, so yeah, absolutely. I think there's some benefits there.
Hey, James, this is Pat. Question that I have is how do you guys just go about developing your marketing? I mean, are you guys like, I guess this is there's 2 parts of this question. Are you targeting just, hey, we want to get more adoption of Bublr, versus we want to get that super fan to create more super fans, right? And then what are the kind of the channels that you're using to say, okay, yeah, like this is really resonating with us, or, for our target audience? Like, what are those elements? What are those channels?
Sure. So first, as a nonprofit, we try to get as much earned media as we can.
Yeah. And you do.
Yeah. So that's a big push for us. And the thing there is is obviously thinking about what are the stories that like are going to resonate with news stations. You know what I mean? If you're trying to go that earned media route, you have to think about what they want to talk about, not what you want to talk about. You have to find that Venn diagram where there's that overlap, because there might be things we're doing that we think are really cool, but just through experience, we know that it's probably not gonna. We have those press releases we send out that absolutely no one picks up, right? So thinking about those things that are exciting and that will get that attention is for that earned media. For the other stuff, a lot of it's about awareness. So like so many people have seen, like, know what Bublr is, but they don't know how it works or like how they can use it. So like that's when Doors Open was like in person. we'd always have our shop open, and we'd have people come through, and every single day they were like, I've always wanted to try one of these, but I didn't want to look stupid doing it. So like a lot of our marketing is trying to get, like, we'll put on classes and things like that of like an opportunity for you, like when you're trying to figure out a new thing, I don't think anyone looks stupid. Like, it's a new thing, you're trying to figure it out. Like, let's be a little bit kinder with ourselves and each other than that. But to give people a safe space that they can try it out, have someone show them how it works. So we try to do little classes to just sort of walk people through that. We'll make short video content that will show people checking out the bike and doing stuff like that. So that's really, like, most people know what Bublr is, that sort of how it works, but sort of trying to get that of like lowering that like intellectual barrier of like, this is some new thing. Because that's really like, there's so few people, like, as a percentage, like as a mode share, like bicycling is so small. So we really are trying to get like those folks who would be like the occasional biker to like, hey, try it out. And so to do that, it's all about lowering their actual or perceived barriers to using the product.
I live in the local area around here, and I see the bikes all the time. And it reminds me of almost like the Sundix red bag, which is, it's basically, it's become so recognizable. The red bag, we're all using the red bag. You see it, it's being shuttled to work. Lunches are in it. It's there. The blue of the Bublr bike, I mean, it's just that in itself, with your brand on the street, it's becoming so recognizable. Let's stay on marketing for a second. Let's talk about, obviously, you're trying to, as a nonprofit, you're trying to be smart about how you get the message out. But I mean, if you could, as I look at your target markets, you've got the community, you've got the actual users, and you have the businesses. Paint a picture, if you could, from an individual perspective. I mean, paint the picture of like, who would be the primary user? I mean, there's got to be a certain individual that maybe you're trying to go after. Is there you know what I'm saying? If you could almost paint it for us a little bit. Who is that typical Bublr bike user?
So
knowing there's variances.
Right. Yeah. So we have a couple. We've had done some sort of, I don't know what, there's a marketing term for this, where you like paint those profiles. You have like a couple of them. I don't remember the term right now. But yeah, so one of our big user groups is college students. We have UW Milwaukee put in a big, their student government, their parking fund subsidized, purchased a bunch of stations on campus and helped underwrite student memberships. So UW Milwaukee students can get $8 annual memberships, and they have the 3 stations on campus, the 3 stations off campus. But so they're a huge user demographic. But all the students, like we got the station at Marquette. So the college population is like a huge user group in a normal year. A little bit different last year, but a normal year. And then another big like demographic piece is that sort of like 30, 40s, lives downtown, works downtown. They'll like, we've got, those are some of our people that maybe they haven't been to every station. But some of those people are taking like 5 trips a day. They're like going to work, going to lunch, coming back from lunch, coming home from work, going someplace after. Like they're like living downtown, working downtown, just taking a whole bunch of short trips all over. That's another like user demographic. And then another one that really grew last year is I need to go on a bike ride. I need to get out of my house. I'm gonna go ride for like I'm gonna go take a 3-hour ride on the Oak Leaf Trail. So I'd say those are like sort of our 3 big sort of like target demographic groups. Obviously lots of people don't fit into those, but those are sort of our 3 big ones.
James, I found it interesting what you were talking about earlier, where, from a marketing standpoint, this isn't let's create a new TV spot and a radio spot and run some digital ads on Milwaukee and build awareness. You have the awareness. What's interesting, it's education. And I think there's a lot of brands out there that are just like you, where it's like, you know what, people know of us and heard of us, but they don't know how to use this. I think of all the motorized scooters, the electric scooters that I'm seeing. I remember when Uber came along, it's like, what is this Uber thing that I can do on my phone? And they just invested a lot of time and energy in building awareness. So when you're doing your PR campaigns and classes, and I think that's smart. That's the place to be. This isn't necessarily an awareness issue as much as it's a how does it work issue.
And how does that add value to what I'm doing? Like, how is this better for me than, like, everyone is obviously already getting to where they need to go for the most part. So it's like, why, anytime you're trying to get someone to change a habit, you're sort of really have to sell that, like, what does this do better for me?
You threw out a term when we were talking in the intro. I might get it wrong, but it was like micro movement or
micro mobility.
Mobility. Now, does that relate to not only bikes, but scooters and other options that are out there? I've never heard that term. With all of the, electric scooters coming in like Lime and Bird and Spin, can you coexist? Do you collaborate? Are you two separate things? Like, how does that work?
So we have, when the city did this most recent RFP, community engagement folks from Lime and Spin both reached out to us and said, like, hey, what are things that we can do together? Like, we're both interested in getting fewer trips done by cars. So how can we work together on that? So we have an access pass for low income people. It's free this year. Anyone who is on food share, housing authority, the city of Milwaukee residents, Medicaid, or SSI can get a free, basically annual Bublr membership.
Very cool.
And Spin has an access pass program too. Normally they have to go through a vetting process, and Spin said, hey, if you just send us everyone who's eligible for your program, we'll reach out to them with an email and say, hey, you're also eligible for our program.
Wow.
And so that was a cool value add that they did. And then we also have an adaptive bike program. So we got some like side-by-side tricycles, upright tricycles, and a hand cycle. And they were also like, hey, we're going to have adaptive stuff into our system. That's stuff we should talk about, communicate how to best serve that population.
You have common goals, so I'm assuming there's opportunity for collaboration versus competition all the time.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, if you look at mode share, especially in Milwaukee, so much of it's car. Like, if we can't fight over the 1% of people that aren't using their car. We have to work together to go after the 98% of people that are in their car.
Yeah, I have to say though, I love Bublr Bikes because they're put back in a station, so it's very tidy. It's very neat. Scooters, no knock on them at all. I love them and I use them, but they're definitely, man, you find them everywhere. I'm surprised they can find them some nights.
And that's one thing, again, a no knock. A lot of people focus on the fact that when they get to their destination, they can just get off the scooter.
Yeah.
And like, that is cool. But I like to point out, like, there's an advantage we both win basically on one side. Like, I think Bublr wins on the start of the trip. You know where you're going to find a Bublr bike.
Yeah.
You don't need to like search on the app and figure it out. You know where you're going to find the Bublr bike. But yes, on the end of the trip, you have to return it to a station that might not be right where you want to go.
Yeah.
The scooters on the front of the trip, you don't know. You could be hunting them. You don't know where they're going to be.
Yeah.
But on the end of the trip, you get to stop exactly where you want it to be. And so a lot of people, like, I do think that's a convenience at the end of the trip. And I just like to point out, I think we win on the start of the trip.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Another question I have for you. I go back to, the who wins, kind of your three buckets of target audiences, the user, the businesses, and the community. And let's go to the business for a second. Obviously, there's a business-to-business marketing perspective. I was looking at some of your sponsors, and you have them categorized. And I'll tell you, it's like there's some generous sponsors you have because you list kind of like, the level that they have to hit. And I was kind of surprised. So my question to you is, from a business-to-business marketing perspective, talk to us a little bit about your strategy in finding how you market to those businesses, how you find those potential new sponsors. That's my first question. And then once you find them, what's your involvement with them? Like, how are you assisting them? How are you educating them? Because you said earlier, James, a big part of this probably is they want to turn and use this as recruitment for that next employee, or to, educate their current employees. Talk to us about how you find them from a marketing perspective, and then how you help them. What kind of tools do you give them?
Sure. So we've sort of you could probably break our sponsors down into a couple big categories. So we've got some sponsors that really what they wanted was like the station, like the 411 building. Like they have that station. So it's the managers of the building. So they want it there as an amenity to their tenants. And so that's like their real, that's Rockwell did the same thing. They want it as an amenity for their employees or tenants is really what MGIC did the same. Yeah, we've had a couple of those where they're like, hey, we need this equipment near our location because we want our tenants and our employees to be able to use it because it's something that a Class A office building or whatever should have. Right. So that's one group of sponsors. And other sponsors like UW Credit Union, they've been a sponsor of ours for 3 years now, and they want to be associated with their brand. They're a credit union, like they're very values driven, and so they want that. We're a nonprofit, they're a credit union, like there's that like alignment there. Sure. And then they just take that opportunity to do really cool like marketing type stuff. Like on one of our stations, their little slogan is, I think it's wheelie fun or wheelie great checking. So like, just like, and like last year they did that, not last year, 2 summers ago, they did this thing of like marketing tips on a bike where some guy would just ride up to the camera on a bicycle or not marketing tips, sorry, money tips on a bike. You just ride up to a bicycle, the camera on a bike and like spew a money tip at you and then like ride off. And it was just like really cool, like different. And so that's what they want. And then so we like do cool stuff with them on social media like that. And then we do have some, we have an event every year and we'll have some sponsors of that are more just sort of like trying to get their name out. But so those I'd say are like our 3 sort of like categories of sponsors. But so the way we get them is we put it out there. And like when we see we see something that looks like, hey, like there would be a good brand alignment here. I or our sponsorship coordinator go hunt around LinkedIn, email our board. Who knows someone here? Let's go find someone. But lately, actually, we've had folks starting now to come to us. They'd be like, awesome. Hey, yeah, which is amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
To carry on with that conversation, you're a moving billboard. Your bikes. And I think it's a real tremendous opportunity for marketers that want to do some micro targeting. If you're a festival down on the lakefront, how great is it to have your brand and dates and messaging on these bikes that are in the immediate neighborhoods, letting people know, hey, it's coming up, come on, walk over. If you're a coffee shop or a food and beverage or a hotel, just to have that kind of traffic going around to hit your target audience right immediately around a business, I think is a really good opportunity. It's not for everybody, and I understand that, but if you're looking to really micro-target in Milwaukee and those surrounding suburbs, I think it's a great opportunity to get your brand messaging out there.
Absolutely. And it is like, especially if you're doing stations, a lot of people think about our users and like, how do I target this like user group? But like, if you've got some of our stations, like they're on busy, it's like everyone that's driving past that is seeing that. Yep. And we're co-located with MCTS. A lot of our stations are. So anyone who's waiting at the bus stop is seeing this stuff. And we do have, that's one of the things that we've gotten a lot better about, is we have a lot of that data of like who's seeing this, like what are your different groups of people that are seeing this. And that's something that sponsors also really value.
Hey, James, so you came to this as kind of in a unique way, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you said you went to law school, right? And that's so how did law school kind of prepare you for this role? I mean, I know you like bikes, you talked about that at the beginning, that's a real passion for you, but how did like law kind of prepare you for this? And then the other question on the flip side of that is, what are some things now that you're in this role, like where did like these challenges you never saw coming up, like where are the gaps?
Sure. So I think law school prepared me for this, in like a lot of these things, even the marketing things, everyone's got an agreement they want signed or created. And so I'm not going to say I read every single one all the way through, but like I know what to look for, and I can like put my counter offer together and things like that. And so law school definitely helped prepare me for that. Also, with a lot of our station locations, sort of a little bit outside of the marketing, but if sort of more the like underwriting, if you will, like the 411 building, like there's liability there and things that need to get worked out so that they're comfortable and happy and are getting what they want and not taking undue risk and we're getting what we want out of the situation. So that sort of stuff. But gaps, I like marketing is not something I knew anything about before this. Yeah, that's definitely sales marketing. But I think a thing that I would say to that is like, in law school, you do need to know how to communicate and communicate clearly
Sure.
and get your points across. And I think that's something that like that is what marketing is.
Yeah,
Now,
translates very well.
you might use slightly different language, but the idea is like, how do I communicate this effectively?
Right on.
How do I convince someone that this is the way that we should do this?
Yeah.
Well, one question that I have is, I was on your website, and you have a lot of events, and I kind of like that you have these get-togethers to get the word out there. Are a lot of these fundraisers, or a lot of these just like you had talked about earlier, where it's maybe about how to use the system and how to use the bikes? What kind of community-based things are you doing?
So we do have, I'd say some of them I'd put, we obviously always hope to raise money, but
Yeah.
I'd put some of them in the almost more friend raiser category of like, hey, come out, like, hopefully you'll give us $25 or $50 or something. But it's like, what are the connections you have? Like who can you introduce to Bublr now that you like see how awesome we are? What friend of yours can you get to hop on a bike? Like, is your business one that would make sense to like market in this way, or is your friend's business something that would make sense to market in this way? But one that we have one big fundraiser every year, the annual so-called Bublr Bash.
Yep.
And this year is will be our seventh birthday party, and that's August 12th. So that is something that we are excited about, and we always that one we try to raise money.
Yeah. I've been to some of the educational ones, and they're great. They're very informal, where you get a cup of coffee, you meet a half a dozen people or more. There's a bike there if you have any questions. But I thought it was just a great way to really entrench yourself in the community and start building relationships. And the one thing I'll say for you, as you look to find partners, cause marketing is so huge right now with every brand. And it always used to be lead with product, lead with service, and talk about those things. And consumers now want to know that if I'm going to pay for something, or if I'm going to invest some of my hard-earned dollars into something, I want to believe in it. I want to, share that commonality with the brand and know that they care about the things that I care about. And I think there's just a lot of potential with brands like yours that are, reducing the amount of cars on the road, getting people healthy, mentally healthy as well, having fun, supporting the community. That's something a lot of people can get behind. So I think I encourage people to look at it as more than just, how do I get a logo on a bike? It's how do we truly partner to tackle a challenge and, get brand believers to join us.
Yeah, and I think that's huge, and that's what we like the most. Like, obviously, that we've got some like, I'm not going to say no to someone who just wants to put their logo on a bike, but if it's a partnership, if you've got something cool you want to do, if there's that good brand alignment, because then we get so much more out of it, and you get the partner gets so much more out of it, and that's, I think, like UW Credit Union is one that's done a good job of that, of just really taking advantage of the fact that your logo is on something that's moving, it's on a bike, you can do cool things with it that you can't do with just your standard billboard. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and Anthem is another partner we've had for a long time, and they really focus on, actually they have their brand on a bunch of bikes specifically around the relationship between physical activity and mental health.
Perfect. Great tie-in, right?
And so like a perfect tie-in.
Yeah.
And they've helped these last 2 years to make that access pass free. And so stuff like that is like, they get their logo on the access pass, but now it went from $8 to free for all these folks.
Yeah.
That's helping us serve our mission of being accessible and equitable,
Yeah.
and it's getting their name out in front of the audience that they want to be out in front of. So yeah.
I love it. Well, let's go around the horn. Kurt, do you have any questions? Pat, do you have any questions as we kind of wrap things up here?
Yeah, James. Go
Go ahead, Pat. You go, and I'll follow you.
Okay, James. So, you guys obviously got some traction. You're going into your 7th year, right? You've got great kind of overall general awareness. If you don't mind, James, sharing with us what are the couple things that are keeping you up at night? I mean, what's worrying you? Where do you like, boy, this is a real kink in the armor for us. We gotta do something about this.
Good question.
So the things that I worry about. So again, as a nonprofit, we want to serve the whole community, but getting stations everywhere just always takes time. Like even when you have the money, like going through the proper processes, the permits and all that stuff. So that's something that like just we can never get our stations everywhere fast enough. And like we've got to sort of grow in a way that makes sense, and that's hard to explain sometimes. People think of it as just like individual stations. We really got to think about it like a network. You just got one station off all on its lonesome, like it's not going to get the same use as when you've got that robust network. So that's something that keeps me up at night. We do have, I'm always again, we're a nonprofit, so our making sure that we get enough money to keep the lights on is always
big shock. It's always one of the challenges.
It's always one of the challenges. I know I guess that's probably a challenge for everyone, especially last year, but that's something that's always, so I'm always thinking of like, how do I add like another sort of like revenue stream or whatever into what we're doing. Like right now we've got the like sponsorship revenue stream, the user revenue stream, and like grants revenue stream. So it's always like, what else can I do to sort of like diversify and make that more robust?
To play off Pat's question, what keeps you up? What gets you excited about the future? What does the future look like for Bublr Bikes?
So I am very excited about the electric assist bikes. I think that's going to be a game changer for us. I think that's going to get even more people who like they were thinking about it, but they're like, oh, but I don't want to end up at work all sweaty or whatever. That are going to give it a try, and they're going to be like, oh wow, this is awesome. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk. Who knows what will happen about some big infrastructure bills coming along the line. And so I think that some of that stuff could be transformational. I think just for the well-being, like it used to be, like we were talking about Milwaukee compared to other cities, when you talk about robust bike infrastructure, it used to be like, well, but we're not Portland, or we're not whatever, Davis, California, we're not Amsterdam, whatever. But like now, if you look at like some of these cities that are building really robust bike infrastructure, even aside from the bike share systems, it's now you have to say, well, we're not Pittsburgh, and it's like, well, we're not that different from Pittsburgh, or we're not Detroit or whatever, and it's like a lot of these Rust Belt cities are seeing that is like that's the way to move forward. And so I'm excited about Milwaukee. Obviously, Milwaukee has made huge strides if you look at the change in bike infrastructure over the last 7 years. But I'm excited with some of these potential big infrastructure bills of Milwaukee really taking it to the next level. And in 10 years, I want people to say, well, we can't do that. We're not Milwaukee.
That's the dream, right?
That's the dream.
Hey, Brian, I've got one final question myself for James. And, James, you had said earlier, last year it was tough for any business, small, medium size, keep the lights on. You were looking to get creative with, different types of revenue streams. It was amazing. Like if you listen back to some of our podcasts from 6-9 months ago, the conversations were very different because we were in the middle of, a different time. So I'm going to keep it positive here. Obviously, here we are coming into the summer of 2021. You started though a year ago, so you started not at the easiest time. What was? I mean, that was a. If I look at your target buckets, I mean, you lost. The business community wasn't back. There weren't a lot of people working down here, so you lost some revenue streams there. Community is big, and people weren't going out. What was the one thing you really learned the most about last year in your role that you're utilizing now? Like the one thing you could say, I learned the most from what was a tough year, and now I'm using it to benefit the organization.
I think I learned about, so I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. So our user revenue stayed the same, but the way people use the system changed dramatically. So I think the thing that I learned and took away from that is that like, it is sort of to realize all these different ways that people could be using the system, and to sort of think about like, okay, so 2 years ago, everyone, or like we had all these people using it for like commuter trips and things like that. And then like, just like short little like exercise. And then last year we had all these people using it for like going for a long bike ride. And I think trying to think about how to capitalize on that, and like, there's no reason that this coming year we can't keep both, right? Like, what is the way that that going forward we have both of those user types using the system robustly. And so I think that's something that I guess maybe it's not, maybe I haven't figured it out yet, but that's something I'm thinking about.
It's on the to-do list, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
James Davies, Executive Director of Bublr Bikes, thank you so much for coming on with us today. And I'd want to encourage everybody, check out their website, bublerbikes.org. And it's BUBLR. It's creative spelling. I very much like it. But bublerbikes.org, you can learn about the organization, how it works. And there's information on there about the 7th B-Day Bash. So congratulations on that upcoming party. Is there any last minute things, James, you wanted to get across or share with our audience?
If you haven't tried a Bublr bike, you should try one. Just hop on one. And if you have any questions about it, there are videos on our website about how to do it. But our app is not Bublr. Our app is B-Cycle LLC. You can check out a bike from there without even having to go stand by the kiosk and not look stupid. You don't look stupid. But if you're worried about it, just download the app and you can stand off to the side and pretend you're scrolling Facebook while you figure it out. You know, no one will even know. That's what I would say. But also I would like to say thank you. Like, this has been awesome. I really appreciate being on here. This has been a fantastic experience.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's such a great brand and it's such a great service in our city and beyond. It was great having you on. James Davies, thank you, sir.
Thanks,
James.
Cheers, awesome. James.